As I'm listening to you, Alyssa, it's remarkable how similar some of these experiences have been. When I think about my son, and it was during COVID, so the kids were just starting to stay at home. He was in the 8th grade, and life was upside down. I think the anxiety, the lack of control made something get triggered, but he was someone who was very healthy weight before. So as he started to hit puberty and lose weight, it seemed appropriate. There was nothing that seemed really particularly off about it. And because it was COVID, I had my niece, my nephew, his wife, and their dog came and lived with us. We were a little cocoon. So there were 7 of us, 2 dogs, and we ate dinner together every single night. And he was at that table eating every single night. But the thing that was super interesting was my nephew said to me, I had an indoor trampoline, he moves a lot, and it was really good for him to have that exercise. He says, wow, he jumps on that trampoline all the time. And I said, really? And then I went and looked at it, and I noticed it was coming apart, but I got the kind that you have in a gym. It was really high quality. And it was falling apart in a couple of months. I called the place, and they said, that's overuse. And I went, huh. And I went and looked at it. They wanted pictures, and it had gone through the metal part at the bottom into the floor. And I realized, wait a minute, there's something more here. I talked to his therapist that he had for a long time. He also got dropped because they didn't have the experience. So we're home. The therapist is dropped. So I went through the school, and I got a recommendation to a nutritionist, but my son wouldn't engage whatsoever around that. So it took a lot of work to find someone. I found someone in Greenwich. I drove him 2 hours each way, once or twice a week. And basically he was taken in there, he was weighed, they checked his vitals, and then they said, you need to eat. Your treatment is to eat. Well, that was not helpful because he would not eat, or he would eat at dinner time. So we did not have a true sense of what was going on. And then I watched him shut down, and then I watched him, I would go in his room and there were gum wrappers everywhere because all he would do was chew gum. And at that point, your body does start to break down, and you can't participate in life as normal. And so I was on a tear. The problem was I am dealing with a young man, an African-American young man. He doesn't fit anyone's box. And his pediatrician was desperate to look for help, but he didn't know what to do, and he was phenomenal. He did not know what to do. And I was not letting my child die from not feeding himself. So we said, okay, we're going to take him on a vacation. We went away for a couple of weeks, and we watched him continue to spiral. I was hoping a change of environment. I was naive. You're just looking for anything to help. And finally, I remember he had been working on something. He was so pleased. Our last day, we were riding around before we left our vacation. And he said, I want to share with you what I've written. I said, what'd you write? And he says, I figured out a plan to get down to 1 piece of bread a day, and then I won't eat anymore. And I went, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And the places in Connecticut, one was only for girls, and the other one was not one that was really deemed appropriate for him. So I was referred to the eating disorder recovery center in Colorado. And so here we are during the height of COVID, sight unseen, taking him to Colorado, and all we could see was the waiting area because you were with masks, you weren't functioning in a normal setting. I never saw what the space looked like where he would spend what was ultimately the next 12 weeks. It was, the thing that worked well was my insurance covered this. This is the first thing they check. Do you have insurance, and will your insurance be accepted? Thank God they accepted the insurance. But then came, after 6 weeks, he was he tried to leave the place to escape. So we ended up moving to Colorado, and we had to find an apartment, and we didn't know how long we were going to be there. And then he came and lived with us for 12 hours and had outpatient for 12 hours. And we had to learn to feed him. We had to learn we were scared. We were afraid what would happen if you go in the bathroom, the door is closed. Is he going to run? Is everything going to come up? What's going to happen? The thing that helped so incredibly well in that program was we had a nutritionist, we had a medical doctor, and he had a therapist So he had a team that worked with him every day, but worked with us every day. I was given a really big book to learn how to feed, to learn what to do, to say, how to role play, how to talk, how to accept him back, how to do all those pieces that we didn't know how to do. After 3 months, when we were ready to come back, again, we're afraid because where do you go? How do you maintain the nutrition? So the problem you have is if you go to a regular school, who's going to watch over your child to make sure they eat? So you end up in a school like a therapeutic school. We were able to do one that wasn't boarding, so we could have him go back and forth an hour every day, hundreds of thousands of dollars to attend this school. But they had a nutritionist, and that person worked with a person that worked with him, and they made sure he ate. He had to maintain his diet. So out of high school, between COVID and then his senior year having another tragedy, my son had one typical year of high school. And when you have an eating disorder, your brain cannot function as normal. So you're not learning anyway. So there's a point of the school, DCF looking and asking about school and attending school. You can be there all you want to be. You can't learn if your brain isn't fed. There's so many things that are gaps around care because the maintenance is as important as anything. And I have to say, he never regressed. He has done beautifully. He is doing incredibly, incredibly well. But eating is still weird for our family. You know, it's always something in the back of your mind. But we had an experience that was unlike anything I could have ever imagined. And they even told me there, we just don't have many like your son. But he was able to really be successful and knock on wood and work his way through. And so that's where we are today. But he is the catalyst for the legislation that led to TCP.